I'm just here for the marketing. But really what's become more powerful is that it's taking away objections from the prospect. So little things that are already part of our program, like, well, hey, how do I do X, Y, and Z? There's a podcast episode on X, Y, and Z. Now the prospect has that in their mind. So when they jump on the sales call with our team, it's already eliminated that objection. So we're building trust, building rapport, and eliminating objections all within this podcast. So it's an incredible tool.
This is John Brandt of the Podcast Factory, and today I'm talking to Nate Armstrong about how the Podcast Factory has helped him launch his podcast and has resulted in easier and faster sales for him and his team. What was the obstacle that would have prevented you from starting your podcast?
Really simple, managing more things, learning another skill set. Like the podcast part, I love because I can just get on and do what I do. It's the tech stuff, the thinking about how to market it, thinking about all the extra stuff that goes into it, because there's so much more to a podcast than just pressing record and then hoping stuff happens. You've got the editing, the sound, the music, the images, all that stuff. So that's what was holding me back. And it held me back for a good, probably 2 years. I'd been thinking about a podcast. And then when it came across your team, Podcast Factory, it was like, what? You guys do everything? You do that whole thing? All the stuff I don't want to do? And I'm like, yeah, this is money. Let's go. So that's what held me back.
What did you find as a result of working with Podcast Factory?
Number one, I got up and running really fast. I think it took 3 weeks, something like that. And half of it was on my shoulders. It probably would have even been faster than that if I would have been able to do everything that I needed to do to be ready for them. So it was really, really simple. The other thing that really shocked me is that I actually, for the amount that they charge, they should probably charge more, but don't tell them that. Okay. But for the amount that they charge, I was actually shocked at the level of service that they provide. Most of the time when you get into a done for you or like an agency scenario, you get a little bit. Here's your menu. You get this little bit. If you want more, then you pay way more. But what I was amazed with is that I've got access to the team leaders. I've got access to a lot of team members, and they're all really good. Like they take care of me. If I send in some kind of support or help request, someone is always responding to me the same day, which in this day and age, like I feel so blessed and so grateful to have them, not only as a team member, but just to be able to even work with them to produce this whole thing. So I was blown away.
What do you like most about working with Podcast Factory?
Number one, they do what they say they're going to do. So that's important to me. Contract aside, when somebody gives you their word, nowadays in business, it's hard to take people at their word. But with Podcast Factory, they deliver and they over deliver. So that's number one for me. Number two, they're good at it. They practice this every day. Like they're not just up there preaching it, they're doing it. They're doing it themselves. They're testing, they're tweaking. And because of that, it makes them really sharp at what they do. The last thing that any of us would want to do is jump in with someone that doesn't really know what they're doing. I'm 100% certain with the Podcast Factory, like they know what they're doing because they've been doing it for so long at such a high level, and they've really set the standard in the podcast world in their niche. So that's what I love most.
So what are the 3 biggest benefits that you've received from working with the Podcast Factory team?
Number one, I got launched. No brainer, right? Number 2 big benefit is I formed a relationship with their team. For me, it's really important. Like I like to know who I'm working with and all that kind of stuff, and they're personable people, and I like spending time with them. I like exchanging ideas with them, and it gets me charged up. Actually, every Monday, right about now, they've got a group call centered for existing clients. And I enjoy jumping on that. I enjoy bouncing ideas. So like the relationship aspect is really, really good. And then number 3, I didn't think that I was going to get this benefit. It just kind of came as a bonus, but the copywriting that their team has put together, like the copywriters, all the way starting with the leadership all the way down, they're so good at copy, so good. And I'm learning copy from them. I didn't expect that. I didn't pay for that, but I'm learning copywriting from them.
So would you recommend the Podcast Factory to anyone else, and why?
So not only would I recommend them to anyone in my network, my family, my friends, or anyone that catches this broadcast later, and I don't make that recommendation lightly. Like I've maybe endorsed 2 or 3 people in the last year, maybe. And so when I put an endorsement on someone or something, like it's because I truly think that they're not only good to me, but I've seen them scale with other people. So I feel good about them. So I feel safe making that recommendation. But why would I do it? Number one, because they've got results for me. Like I'm happy with the results, and it's been sustained results. It's not like one time, hey, we got this thing done, shake hands, we're on to the next. No, we're in a longer term relationship together. Week in and week out, we're producing more podcasts. And so we want to make sure that like the relationship's solid, and it is, and it probably will be forever. So I would definitely endorse them.
Awesome. And anything else that you'd like to add?
Yeah. So here's what I would say about JR, the Podcast Factory, the entire team. So when I first came in, before I got to know them, I had in my mind like podcast. This is like the best marketing tool in the world. Let's get the podcast going for the marketing aspect of it. And then after I really understood from them what the tool can do, it's not just a marketing tool. This is more like a multi-purpose tool. So number one purpose, okay, marketing, great. That's obvious. But number two purpose, what about existing folks, existing prospects that are already on your list that maybe you just haven't hit the right angle with them. You haven't answered the right question with them. And one of the things that the Podcast Factory taught me is that this is actually the most powerful tool that you could have to hit those aspects, to hit those angles. So like I've got thousands of people on our email list that for whatever reason, they haven't jumped in and decided to work with us yet. Well, I started putting them through the podcast episodes one at a time. And it's free content for them. I'm not charging them anything or anything like that. It's professionally published, so it's in an environment that when they see it or they listen to it, they respect it. And then number three, once they get in there, they usually will subscribe and stay in there. So now they're getting a weekly message like this. And when the Podcast Factory showed this to me, at first I'm like, okay, well, I'm just here for the marketing. But really what's become more powerful is that it's taking away objections from the prospect. So little things that are already part of our program, like, well, hey, how do I do X, Y, and Z? There's a podcast episode on X, Y, and Z. Now the prospect has that in their mind. So when they jump on the sales call with our team, it's already eliminated that objection. So we're building trust, building rapport, and eliminating objections all within this podcast. So it's an incredible tool.
That is awesome. I'm glad to hear that. So that's all the questions I have for you today. We appreciate taking a little bit of time out of your day.
Awesome. And thanks for following up with me.